My beloved child, pause here for a moment, because what reached the heavens last night was not quiet, and what changed in the unseen realm did not happen by accident. Something about your name moved through a conversation you were never invited into, and before the night ended, everything they thought they understood about you began to fall apart. They believed they had measured you correctly. They believed they had seen the full picture. They believed your silence meant weakness, your patience meant surrender, your distance meant defeat, and your kindness meant you would always remain easy to misunderstand. But last night, a veil lifted. Not loudly, not in front of a crowd, not with thunder shaking the walls. It happened in a smaller place, in a moment no one expected, when one truth about you stepped into the room and refused to leave. And now I need you to listen with your spirit, not just your ears, because this message is not arriving to entertain your curiosity. It is arriving because you have been feeling something shifting, haven't you? A strange heaviness leaving your chest, a sudden stillness around your name, a sense that someone, somewhere, finally saw what they were blind to before. You could not explain it, but your soul recognized it. Something changed while you were sleeping. Last night, they heard something about you that disturbed the story they had been holding. Not because it was negative, but because it was true. And truth has a way of walking into a room with no apology. Truth does not shout to be believed. It simply stands there, glowing, until every false version of you begins to look small. For a long time, they carried an image of you that was incomplete. They looked at one season and called it your whole life. They looked at one mistake and called it your identity. They looked at your quiet recovery and assumed nothing powerful was happening. They saw you being tested, but they did not see me strengthening you. They saw you walking alone, but they did not see angels surrounding your steps. They saw you lose certain people, but they did not see heaven removing what could not travel with your assignment. And that is why last night mattered. Because somebody finally spoke differently. Somebody finally said what others had avoided saying. Somebody finally admitted that you were not the person they assumed you were. Somebody finally realized that your silence was not emptiness. It was restraint. Your patience was not fear. It was wisdom. Your calmness was not weakness. It was spiritual control. And your absence was not failure. It was protection. Do not skip this moment, because what I am about to reveal is connected to something you have been sensing but could not name. There was a conversation where your name appeared, and at first, it seemed ordinary, casual, almost accidental. But nothing about it was accidental. I allowed your name to rise in that space because the time had come for hidden things to surface. They could no longer keep judging you from old information. They could no longer keep leaning on rumors, assumptions, emotional reactions, or half-truths. I placed your name where it needed to be placed, in front of the exact ears that needed to hear. And when your name came up, something shifted in the atmosphere. One person grew quiet. Another tried to speak, then stopped. Someone remembered something you did that they had ignored before. Someone connected a detail they had overlooked. Someone realized your actions had been cleaner than your reputation. Someone understood that you had carried more than you ever explained. And suddenly, the version of you they had been holding did not feel believable anymore. My beloved child, you must understand something. Heaven does not always defend you immediately in public, because some revelations must ripen in silence. Some truths must gather weight before they are released. Some people must sit long enough with their own assumptions until those assumptions become uncomfortable. And last night, discomfort entered the room. Not fear, not punishment. Awareness. The kind of awareness that makes a person replay old moments and ask, did we misunderstand them? The kind that makes someone remember your gentleness after they mistook it for weakness. The kind that makes them think back to how you kept loving, kept praying, kept choosing peace, even when you were given every reason to become bitter. They thought they knew why you walked away. They did not. They thought they knew why you became quiet. They did not. They thought they knew why you stopped explaining yourself. They did not. They thought you were losing. They did not understand you were being hidden. And when heaven hides someone, it is not because that person has no value. It is because something holy is being built away from careless hands. Last night, they began to understand that your life has not been random. Your pain has not been wasted. Your restraint has not been unnoticed. Your tears have not disappeared into nothing. Every silent prayer, every lonely night, every moment you chose not to retaliate, every time you swallowed words that could have exposed someone else, heaven recorded it. And now the record is speaking. But listen closely, because this is where the mystery deepens. The person who changed their mind about you did not do it because you begged to be understood. They did not do it because you defended yourself perfectly. They did not do it because you chased them, explained everything, or forced your side into the conversation. They changed because I allowed them to see something they were not ready to see before. There was one detail, one quiet piece, one small truth. And when it was revealed, the entire picture shifted. That is how divine timing works. For months, maybe years, you may hold a truth inside your chest and wonder why no one can see it. You may ask why your character is being questioned while your heart remains clean. You may wonder why people believe the loudest voice instead of the honest one. But then, in one night, I can place one sentence in the right mouth, one memory in the right mind, one proof in the right moment, and the whole room becomes silent. That is what happened. They became silent, not because they had nothing to say, but because something inside them knew they had been wrong. And I want you to feel the weight of that, not so you can become proud, not so you can celebrate anyone's embarrassment, but so you can understand that heaven has been working on your behalf even when it looked like nothing was moving. Your name has been under review in places you cannot see. Your story has been entering conversations you did not start. Your character has been defended by evidence you did not present. Your heart has been witnessed by people who were not supposed to notice, but did. And now, everything they believed about you is changing. But this is only the beginning, because what they discovered last night was not the full revelation. It was only the first crack in the wall. And once a wall built on misunderstanding begins to crack, light does not ask permission to enter. Something else is coming forward, something deeper, something they are not prepared to face yet. Because last night, when they realized they had misread you, another question entered their minds. And that question was not small. It was the kind of question that makes a person sit up in the dark and replay everything from the beginning. What if they were never the problem? And when that question entered the room, heaven leaned closer. A strange thing happens when a person finally begins to question a story they once believed without hesitation. At first, they resist it. They tell themselves nothing has changed. They try to return to the old version of events. They repeat the same conclusions they repeated before. They search for reasons to hold on to the familiar narrative because admitting they were wrong feels heavier than continuing the illusion. But last night, something happened that made resistance difficult. Not impossible, just difficult. Because once truth enters a person's mind, it does not leave quietly. It lingers. It waits. It echoes in unexpected moments. And that is exactly what has been unfolding. My beloved child, stay with this message, because what I am about to reveal reaches deeper than a simple change of opinion. This was not merely about people reconsidering their view of you. This was about them beginning to see themselves. And that realization is far more powerful. For a long time, some of them looked at your life through the lens of their own fears. They projected their wounds onto your intentions. They projected their insecurities onto your decisions. They projected their assumptions onto your silence. When they could not understand your peace, they called it distance. When they could not understand your boundaries, they called it pride. When they could not understand your growth, they called it luck. When they could not understand your strength, they called it stubbornness. But the moment they started questioning what they believed about you, something unexpected happened. They also began questioning what they believed about themselves. And that is where the night truly changed, because now they are standing at the edge of a realization they never expected to face. The realization that perhaps you carried far more grace than they gave you credit for. The realization that perhaps your heart was cleaner than they assumed. The realization that perhaps the person they criticized was actually the person who showed the most patience. The realization that perhaps you were fighting battles they never knew existed. You see, my beloved child, people often judge what they cannot see. They judge seasons without understanding the storms. They judge decisions without understanding the sacrifice. They judge silence without understanding the heartbreak. And yet, there comes a moment when hidden things begin rising to the surface. That moment has begun. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Not in a way that satisfies human impatience. But steadily. Like dawn pushing darkness away 1 inch at a time. And right now, somewhere beyond your awareness, minds are changing. Memories are rearranging. Conversations are unfolding. Questions are multiplying. Because the version of you they carried is no longer matching the evidence they are seeing. Do not skip this part of the story. Something important is hiding here. Many times, you prayed for understanding. Not recognition. Not applause. Just understanding. You wanted someone to finally see your heart. To finally understand why you made certain choices. To finally recognize the burden you carried without complaint. And there were moments when it felt as though those prayers vanished into silence. You wondered whether anyone would ever know. Whether anyone would ever understand. Whether anyone would ever see beyond the rumors, the assumptions, the misunderstandings. But what you could not see was that heaven was already moving pieces into position. While you were healing, I was arranging. While you were crying, I was preparing. While you were questioning, I was building. And while you were waiting, I was revealing. Not to everyone. Not yet. But to the people whose awakening matters. Because not every opinion deserves your energy. Not every misunderstanding deserves your explanation. Not every accusation deserves your response. Some battles are won through silence. Some victories arrive without an argument. Some truths become undeniable simply because they survive long enough. And your truth has survived. That is why the atmosphere around your name is changing. People who once felt certain are no longer certain. People who once spoke confidently now hesitate. People who once judged quickly are now reconsidering slowly. And there is something profoundly powerful about that. Because heaven never needed to force anyone to believe in you. Truth does its own work. Truth carries its own light. Truth possesses its own strength. It does not need to chase acceptance. It only needs time. And time has been working in your favor. Listen carefully. There is a reason you have felt different lately. A reason you have sensed movement beneath the surface. A reason your spirit has felt as though something unseen is unfolding. Your soul has been detecting changes before your eyes could confirm them. The spiritual realm often shifts before the physical world catches up. The answer appears in the unseen before it becomes visible in the seen. The door opens spiritually before the handle moves physically. And right now, several things are already shifting. People are remembering details they ignored. People are connecting pieces they overlooked. People are noticing patterns they once dismissed. And with every new realization, another layer of misunderstanding falls away. But there is something even bigger happening. something that has not fully emerged yet. Because last night did not merely change what they believed about you, it changed what they expect from the future. That is the part they have not spoken aloud yet. Stay a little longer. The next revelation matters. When people believe a false story about you, they build future expectations on that story. If they think you are weak, they expect weakness. If they think you are broken, they expect collapse. If they think you are defeated, they expect failure. If they think you are forgotten, they expect you to disappear quietly. But when the story changes, the future changes with it. And that realization has begun unsettling certain people. Because now they are asking themselves questions they never asked before. Questions like, what if they stronger than we thought? What if they becoming something we never expected? What if their season is changing? What if everything we assumed was wrong? Those questions are growing, and every question is opening another door. You have no idea how many assumptions are being challenged right now. You have no idea how many old conclusions are beginning to crumble. You have no idea how many people are quietly revisiting moments involving you. Moments they thought they understood. Moments they now see differently. Moments that suddenly carry a new meaning. And some of them are feeling something they did not anticipate. Regret. Not dramatic regret. Not public regret. Quiet regret. The kind that arrives when someone realizes they underestimated a person who never stopped showing grace. The kind that arrives when someone realizes they misjudged a heart that remained sincere. The kind that arrives when someone realizes they saw only a chapter and assumed it was the entire book. My beloved child, hear me carefully. Do not allow this moment to fill you with bitterness. Do not allow changing opinions to become your source of worth. Your value was never dependent on their understanding. Your purpose was never dependent on their approval. Your identity was never dependent on their conclusions. I knew who you were before they formed an opinion. I knew your heart before they questioned it. I knew your future before they misunderstood it. And while they were debating your story, I was writing your next chapter. That chapter is closer than you think, closer than it feels, closer than appearances suggest. Because the shift that began last night is connected to something larger than reputation, larger than validation, larger than recognition. It is connected to timing, divine timing, the kind of timing that rearranges circumstances behind the scenes before anyone realizes what is happening. The kind of timing that causes pieces to move into place quietly. The kind of timing that prepares people before preparing opportunities. And that is exactly what is occurring now. Preparation. Not everyone recognizes it. Not everyone understands it. But preparation is happening. Some people are being prepared to witness your next season. Some people are being prepared to understand your journey. Some people are being prepared to see what heaven has been building in secret, and the closer they get to that realization, the more uncomfortable the old story becomes. Because the old story cannot survive what is coming. The old assumptions cannot survive what is about to be revealed. The old misunderstandings cannot survive the light approaching on the horizon. Something is drawing near. Something that will make many of last night's revelations seem small by comparison. Something connected to a truth that has been hidden far longer than anyone realizes. A truth involving not only how they see you, but why certain events unfolded the way they did. And when that truth finally emerges, the silence that entered the room last night will be nothing compared to what happens next. Because there is one detail. One missing piece. One revelation heaven has not fully uncovered yet. And the moment that piece comes into the light, everything changes again. That moment is closer than anyone suspects. And what they discover next, they are not prepared for. My beloved child, There are moments in life when a single realization begins a chain reaction that no one can stop. Last night was one of those moments. What seemed like a simple conversation was never simple. What appeared to be an ordinary exchange of words carried a weight far greater than anyone in that room understood. Because once doubt entered the old story they had been telling about you, the foundation beneath that story began to crack. And now those cracks are spreading. Slowly, quietly, relentlessly. Stay here with me a little longer, because something extraordinary is unfolding beneath the surface. Today, some of those same people are carrying questions they did not have yesterday. Questions that followed them after the conversation ended. Questions that followed them into the silence. Questions that followed them into the night. And no matter how hard they try to move on, those questions remain. Because truth has a strange way of lingering. A lie can feel powerful for a season. An assumption can dominate a room for years. A misunderstanding can shape entire relationships. But truth is patient. Truth waits. Truth does not panic. And eventually, truth arrives. That arrival has begun. You have spent so much time wondering why certain people never understood you. You replayed conversations. You revisited memories. You questioned yourself. You asked whether you should have explained more. Whether you should have defended yourself. Whether you should have fought harder to be understood. But there is something I need you to know. Not every misunderstanding is your responsibility to fix. Not every false narrative deserves your energy. Not every opinion deserves access to your peace. Sometimes heaven asks you to remain silent because a greater revelation is already being prepared. You wanted immediate understanding, but I was preparing lasting understanding. You wanted quick answers, but I was preparing undeniable answers. You wanted people to hear your voice, but I was preparing a moment when truth would speak louder than words ever could. That moment is approaching, closer than you realize, closer than they realize, and the signs are already appearing. Someone who once doubted you now feels uneasy. Someone who once criticized you now feels uncertain. Someone who once dismissed you now finds themselves thinking about you far more than they expected. Not because you forced your way back into their thoughts. Not because you demanded attention. But because something is awakening. Something they can no longer ignore. For years, they believed they understood your story. But now they are beginning to understand that they only knew fragments. A page here. A chapter there. A moment taken out of context. A decision viewed through incomplete information. And suddenly the picture looks different. Much different. Do not skip this part. Because what happens next matters. The human mind can defend a false belief for a very long time. But once enough evidence begins pointing toward truth, resistance becomes exhausting. And some of them are becoming exhausted. Exhausted from defending conclusions that no longer make sense. Exhausted from holding on to assumptions that no longer fit. Exhausted from maintaining a version of reality that keeps falling apart every time another piece of truth appears. They may not say it openly. Not yet. But inside, something is changing. Inside, they are beginning to see you differently. Inside, they are beginning to revisit moments they thought were settled forever. And every memory they revisit reveals another layer. A layer they missed. A detail they overlooked. A truth they ignored. My beloved child, you must understand something powerful. When heaven begins correcting a misunderstanding, it rarely happens all at once. The process is gradual, piece by piece, layer by layer. Because if every truth arrived at the same moment, many people would not be able to receive it. So revelation comes in waves. And last night was only the first wave. The second wave has already started. Some are remembering your kindness. Others are remembering your consistency. Others are remembering how you remained respectful when disrespect would have been easier. Others are remembering how you walked away from conflict instead of feeding it. Others are remembering how you kept your integrity when compromise seemed more rewarding. And every memory is changing the story. Every memory is weakening the illusion. Every memory is strengthening the truth. But there is another reason this shift is happening now. A reason hidden even deeper. Because the next season of your life requires certain people to see clearly. The future that is approaching cannot arrive while old misunderstandings remain untouched. The doors I am opening cannot fully reveal themselves while people continue looking at you through outdated assumptions. The chapter ahead requires clarity, not from everyone, but from the people who matter. And that is why the correction has begun. Something is being aligned. Something is being arranged. Something is being positioned. And even though you cannot see it yet, you can probably feel it. That strange sense that the atmosphere around your life is changing. That feeling that something is moving. That quiet awareness that a chapter is ending. You are not imagining it. The shift is real. The movement is real. The preparation is real. And what happened last night was one of the first visible signs. Stay with me. Because there is another layer to this story. A layer very few people understand. Some of the people who misunderstood you were never truly angry with you. They were confused by you. Confused by your resilience. Confused by your ability to keep going. Confused by your refusal to become bitter. Confused by your willingness to keep believing after disappointment. Confused by your strength during seasons that should have broken you. They expected collapse. Instead they witnessed endurance. They expected bitterness. Instead they witnessed grace. They expected revenge. Instead they witnessed restraint. And because they could not explain your strength, they created explanations that felt easier to believe. But those explanations are no longer working. Because the evidence keeps pointing somewhere else. The evidence keeps pointing toward growth, toward healing, toward transformation, toward purpose. And purpose has a way of exposing every false narrative eventually. That is why the room felt different last night. Not because everyone suddenly became perfect. Not because every misunderstanding vanished. Not because every answer appeared. But because the first veil lifted. And once the first veil lifts, the others often follow. One truth leads to another. One realization leads to another. One awakening leads to another. Until eventually the entire picture becomes impossible to ignore. My beloved child, there is something I want you to remember as these changes continue. Do not chase validation. Do not chase explanations. Do not chase the approval that once seemed so important. What I am bringing into your life is far greater than approval. What I am preparing is far greater than recognition. Because approval depends on people. Purpose depends on me. Recognition can disappear overnight. Purpose cannot. Opinions can change with circumstances. Purpose remains. And while they are slowly discovering who you truly are, I am preparing you for something even bigger. Something that has been quietly forming behind the scenes. Something connected to prayers you almost forgot you prayed. Something connected to tears nobody saw. Something connected to nights when you felt alone. Those moments were not wasted. They were preparation. The waiting was preparation. The silence was preparation. The uncertainty was preparation. Everything has been leading toward a moment that is closer now than ever before. And here is the part that should capture your attention. The people who changed their minds last night still do not know everything. Not even close. They think they have uncovered the truth. But they have only uncovered a fraction of it. They think they have found the answer. But they have only discovered the first clue. There is a deeper revelation waiting beneath the surface. A revelation connected to why certain doors closed, why certain relationships ended, why certain opportunities disappeared, why certain delays happened. And when that revelation finally comes into the light, many people will realize that what looked like loss was actually protection. What looked like rejection was actually redirection. What looked like a setback was actually preparation. But they do not see that yet. Not yet. For now, they are standing at the edge of understanding. For now, they are staring at pieces that refuse to fit the old story. For now, they are asking questions they never thought they would ask. And one particular question keeps returning. Again and again. Quietly. Persistently. Relentlessly. A question that is beginning to echo through their thoughts. A question that makes everything even more complicated. Because after everything they discovered last night, after every assumption that started falling apart, after every memory they began revisiting, one thought suddenly entered the room. A thought nobody expected. A thought so powerful that it changed the direction of the entire conversation. And the moment that thought appeared, nobody knew what to say next. Because if that thought turns out to be true, then the biggest misunderstanding was never about who you were. It was about what heaven has been preparing you for all along. And that realization is only beginning.